there's a Wednesday that's coming. I don't know. I think we might be getting lunch. And then we're just visiting, I think, for a little bit. Yep. Yep, yep, yep. It's interesting. It'll be good to, when we get the PDQs done, we can start putting the other stuff for the winter lecture. Yeah, just to get rid of the.
Maybe do. Let me check.
To include those theological readers that suggested those articles, but
Yeah,
you know, I'll get to that.
Oh, there is a clicker right there. Found it.
What do you have to do? Oh. And how old is your dog? That's a good age.
Except he's two. It's the carrier.
She was the opposite. The older she got, the more stationary.
I wish he was like that.
Oh yeah. And this, to a certain, because I'm a big cat guy person.
presentation, I'll stand up.
Yeah,
Okay,
that would be
that's fine.
fantastic, yeah.
I was wondering whether you wanted to be closer to that thing.
Yeah,
I'll go there. It will be, yeah, absolutely, it will be.
See if these are on there. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Wilson Center. We're excited to have you here on a beautiful fall day in our extremely freezing fifth floor conference room. So I hope everyone.
You're raising.
I know, exactly. It's pretty funny. I'm glad I wore a coat today. But welcome. I'm Gwen Young, and I direct the Global Women's Leadership Initiative and the Women in Public Service Project here at the Wilson Center. And we have a simple goal of ensuring that by 2050, 50% of all leadership positions in public service are held by women. So as part of that goal, we look forward to meeting exciting and dynamic women, such as the two women to my right, that are actually in office or have been in office and are leading changes in public policy across the globe. So we welcome you today for our conversation on leadership in space with Simonetta De Pippo, who's head of the United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs, and Federica Bindi, who's a director and scholar for the Foreign Policy Initiative and the Institute for Women's Policy Research. I will just do a quick introduction. You do have their bios, but I've had the pleasure of speaking with Simonetta before we entered the room and following her career path a little bit. But she's the director now for the United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs. Before that, she was head of the European Space Policy Observatory in Brussels. She's also served as the director of human spaceflight of the European Space Agency from 2008 to 2011, and director of the Observation of the Universe from 2002 to 2008. But she started out as a physicist and moved out of Italy to Brussels and now to Vienna. So we're very honored to have you here with us today. And Federica Bindi, who's a senior fellow and director of the Foreign Policy Initiative at the Institute for Women's Policy Research. She's also a senior fellow at the Center for Transatlantic Relations at Johns Hopkins School of Advanced International Relations, known as SAIS. She holds the Dan Gurman Distinguished Visiting Chair at Appalachian State University in North Carolina and the Jean Monnet Chair at the University of Rome Tor Vergata, where she founded and directed the European Union Center of Excellence. So she is a distinguished colleague in the DC area, and I welcome you, Federica, to the Wilson Center today. And I think we'll start off with Ms. De Pippo, and I think you have a presentation to tell us what you do and how you got to where you are.
Yeah, do you need me to use the microphone, or
I think
can
is
you
this
hear me? Okay, fine. So I thought it was good to make a presentation on, let me see if, no. Let's start with the technical issues. Always.
which I think we are going to hand you a mic because I think we're recording this, so it has to be on mic for.
Thank you. No, because I don't want to. Okay? Can you see it? Good. Okay, so I thought that would have been good to introduce a little bit what we do at the Office for Outer Space Affairs at the United Nations. And so the title of my presentation is Leadership in Space, because in reality we are leading the world in space activities, and I'll tell you in a moment why or how. Good. So the main goal we have at the Office for Outer Space Affairs is to bring the benefits of space to humankind, which is quite a broad topic, I would say. So what we do, we promote international cooperation in the peaceful uses of outer space, particularly focusing on developing countries, but not only, again, to bring the benefit of space activities to humankind. Just to summarize a little bit what we do, in non-UN words, because sometimes help, we are, in a way, the office is a capacity builder. So what we do training courses, technical advisory missions, workshops, and also we provide access to space mainly for developing countries. So we really try to bring the information on space technologies, space-based data, space infrastructure, how you can use in a developing country this kind of benefits for improving the quality of life in your given country. Global Facilitator, again, as I said, we try to put together in a sort of a platform all the main players in the space arena. And we also help developed and developing countries to work together. You could say, why you need the UN to do that? Because we know how to do that. It's really easier also for developed countries to work through us with developing countries. And then in a way, we are the gateway for space activities in the UN system. So we are an office of the Secretariat, which means that we are not a specialized agency, so we are reporting directly to the Secretary General and the General Assembly, and therefore we are and our mandate is 100% space activities, while you have a lot of other entities in the UN dealing with space activities for fulfilling their mandates, but our mandate is space in a way. So that's the reason why we are the getaway of for outer space, as we say here, in the UN system. Okay, for sure you know better than me that, because you have been following for sure what happened since the launch of the first artificial satellite in 59. We have really okay, more than 50 years has gone, and what was true at that time. So at that time we had the Soviet Union and the United States, the only two spacefaring nations. Now we have more than 70 space agencies, more than 300 satellites in orbit. Not in orbit, operated, so still working in orbit. We have currently more commercial operators than governments, which means that space in certain topics is becoming more and more commercial, which is also another important topic. And space is a global common, which means that we want to strive in order to have all the advancement of space technology, space research, space applications, space services, benefiting all member states, as we say, so that no one is left behind. And last year in September in New York, the UN Summit on Sustainable Development approved the 17 new Sustainable Development Goals, which is the, let's say, the milestone we are looking at in 2030. And okay, I just put here some of the key Sustainable Development Goals for us. What we are trying to do is to map all our programs and all the space technologies that we master with the Sustainable Development Goals, so that we can really use space activities as a tool for fulfilling the Sustainable Development Goals, which means that 2030 is our goal. So, for sure, space is a common domain for humanity. And so, again, as I said, our work is to bring this benefit to everyone. So, as I said, as no one is left, because no one has to be left behind. Space has always been a great example of international cooperation. Or sometimes when on Earth you have a couple of important spacefaring nations or nations, they are, I mean, conflicting or they're not going exactly well along together. In space, they usually cooperate, and one of the examples is the International Space Station, when you have the Russians and the Americans working quite well, also because, you know, you need to have both of them working together, but then you have the Chinese also trying to enter into the the space arena and trying to find bilateral cooperation. So it's quite an interesting setup that we have in space. And as I said, we are the only international body on a global scale with this mandate of facilitating the relationship in the user space. So our leadership roles are diverse and complex, but how we lead in the space arena. Okay, first of all, we are the secretariat of the Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space, which is the oldest and biggest global committee in the world. Currently, we have 83 members, becoming 84 by the end of the year with the approval from the General Assembly of New Zealand, which applied for becoming member this year. And every time we take a decision in Vienna, the decision is taken by consensus. So we don't vote. This is the rule that we have. Member states and the Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space only agree by consensus. You could say, I mean, it's difficult. It works. I have to tell you, it's not exactly easy, but it works. So clearly, this requires a lot of pre-work. I mean, because the agreements have to be fined in advance before they enter officially in the meeting room, and sometimes it's not enough. But usually when we end the official meetings and the official sessions of the Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space, we get a very interesting result every time by consensus. This is another example, the ICG. ICG is the International Committee on Global Navigation Satellite System. It has been, it started 11 years ago. This is the 11th year, 10 years anniversary last year. So we have all the GNSS providers, GNSS Global Navigation Satellite System. So we have United States with GPS, we have the Russians with GLONASS, we have the Chinese with Beidou, we have the Europeans with Galileo, for example. All together, they meet, they also with the users, and they every time make a step ahead in trying to integrate and interoperate all the systems in order to have a better service for all the citizens in the world. And frankly, again, this is a very good role model for international cooperation, at least in space. It works quite well, but it's because all the members, and mainly, as I said, Chinese, Russian, European, and Americans, and now also the Indians are knocking at the door with their own small system in GNSS. They are really working together for the benefit of humankind. And we are the executive secretariat of ICG, so we facilitate the work, we prepare the documents, we help them in getting on the right track, if I may say so. And another very good example is UN Spider. UN Spider is the program dealing with the management of the full disaster cycle and in emergency response. And this is what is written in the General Assembly resolution, which decided the creation of this program. And I use these UN words this time because it's very, very impressive in a way. So the main goal is to ensure that all countries in the world, so not only the 83 countries dealing with space in the Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space, but all the countries in the world, 193, ensure that all countries have access to and develop the capacity. So both, they need to have access to all the possible data they need, but also they have to develop the capacity of dealing with those data, to use all types of space-based information to support the full disaster management cycle. Now we are also going more on one side on the emergency response and on the other side on early warning, just to really manage at the maximum extent possible this feature. But you know, these are the kind of activities that we do. And just an example, Hurricane Matthew, we got a phone call from the National Civil Protection in Dominican Republic 10 minutes after Hurricane Matthew was on Haiti and Dominican Republic. And what happened was the president of Haiti called the president of the Dominican Republic, and they called us immediately after. Why? Because we have been working a lot with the Dominican Republic, which, by the way, is not a member of the Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space. I was there in July last time. I met with the National Civil Protection Commission, 25 representatives from 25 different ministries. They're very good. They put together a control center for emergency response, and they've been trained by us. So what they were asking for was to get images very, very quickly of the area, not only for the Dominican Republic, but also on behalf of Haiti, because Haiti, I mean, is in, let's say, not exactly in the same situation as the Dominican Republic, as really a poor country, and they don't have the skills to do that. So what they asked us to do was just to provide free of charge images. And that's what we did. We asked the Italians, they have a constellation of 6 satellites, 3 of them with radars on board, to get images. And so the Italians decided to redirect the satellites in order to get images of the area. And Digital Globe, which is quite a famous private company in the United States, owing 4 satellites, high resolution images, providing high resolution images on a commercial basis, they provided access to their data free of charge just to help us to help Haiti and Dominican Republic. But the point is that they were ready to analyze the images and to work with them because they've been trained by us. Another important tool, very quickly, is the register of the objects launched into outer space, which is a sort of a transparency and confidence building measure, because with this register, we keep everything which is going on in space under control, quote unquote, which means that we register all the information on all the objects launched into outer space. So not only the commercial, not only the scientific, every payload, every satellite launched into outer space is registered here. And if you go on our website, you find all the information. And when there is someone who, for whatever reason, cannot be registered, for example, we have Taiwan, which launched a few satellites, but we cannot register them because Taiwan is not a United Nations member. We still have the online index where we complement additional information. So we complement the information that we have on the official register, so anyone can go and publicly can access this kind of information. Okay, this is just to give you the number of satellites which have been registered. You see this is since the beginning of the registry. So if you see this Russian Federation registered already more or less 3,500 satellites, being the first one, and then United States with 2,000 more or less and 250 satellites. Okay, just a few information on the office. Okay, I'm the only female director in Vienna. We have more or less, I mean, it's not clear how many individuals are in Vienna because we have a lot of contractors, seconded people, interns, so thousands of people. But in any case, I'm the only female director. This is the percentage we have. What is important to notice is that here I mentioned only the staff members. We are far more because we have a lot of other people seconded, internships, we have JPOs, so we have also additional people. But if we stick with the staff members, that's the percentage, and that's also the geographical distribution. When we organize workshops and training courses, we encourage female presence. And sometimes the selection for speakers is also done on the basis of regional, let's say on the regional and also gender, sometimes also age. So we try to have young women from developing countries because we pay for them to come to the place and make a presentation. So it's a way of helping them in getting also exposed to other experts in this. Okay. I like this picture a lot, mainly because the three of them, they're three American astronauts of female gender. I don't know if you know them. The one in the center is Peggy Whiston. At that time, she was the International Space Station commander. The one on the left is Pam Roy. And at that time, she was shuttle commander. And this picture is quite interesting because it has been the only time in history when on the International Space Station, we had both the ISS commander and the shuttle commander of female gender. It never happened for the time being. And now Peggy is ready to fly again. So it's also important to see that we have to differentiate not only because we want to have a balanced representations, but also because in science, in microgravity conditions, the physiological reaction of a human body, female or male gender, is different. So if we really want to do science properly, we need to have a balanced representation of gender in orbit, in microgravity condition. We also believe that when you have women in leadership position, and then you have men also in other leadership positions, then this composition is an asset instead of being a problem. And that's what we experienced. And I do believe that we need to support each other in order to be able to change a little bit the current situation, which is a little bit better than what it was a little bit ago, but still it's far away of being the right balance. Okay, just briefly on my experience. When I was appointed Director of Human Spaceflight at the European Space Agency in 2008, I've been the first female director taking up duty in the European Space Agency since its creation in 1975. Another one joined the European Space Agency 15 days after. So, but in total, these are the only two directors of female gender in history at the European Space Agency. So when I was there in 2009, because at the beginning I thought, okay, it's only a question at national level in Italy. No, in Europe was the same. So I said, okay, it's the right time to create an association which is called Women in Aerospace Europe, which is a sister association of women in aerospace, which was created here in the United States more or less 30 years ago. And then we created also Africa and Canada, and we are now trying to create a global structure, Women in Aerospace. As I said, I'm currently the only female director in Vienna. And yes, these are three pictures, quite recent. The one on the right-hand side last week in New York. And it's also important that we link the leadership action with the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals I mentioned. And there is one, which is the number 5, gender equality, which is quite relevant for what we are debating here. And so what is important is also that I got from member states back in June the request of thinking about a project dealing with education in STEM and women, mainly in developing countries. So I put together a project which is really starting right now. I mean, we'll start in the next coming weeks, which is called Space for Women. By the way, I met the head of UN Women last week because we are thinking about doing something together. So Space for Women, space, is double meaning. And so what I would like to do is to create the occasion for organizing a workshop next year, probably in New York, we will see, where I want to bring women from developing countries and try to put together this project for approval by our member states in June 2018. So very quickly, I don't want to bore you too much. That's the last slide. In June 2018, we will have a global conference called Unispace Plus 50. It is celebrating on one side the 50th anniversary of the first Unispace, the first global space conference, which was held in '68. And but at the same time will define the future of the UN in space, the future of our member states in space activities. And so it's the right time to define the future strategy, what we call Space 2030, because it has to be in line with the Sustainable Development Goals. And I can assure you that Space for Women will be one of the highlight projects to be presented in June 2018. And I'm really hoping that also through this exchange like today, I can get also inputs and information and comments that I can bring with me in order to put together the best Space for Women project ever. Thank you.
Thank you. I love that. I love they have a 2050 goal. Federica.
Right. Thank you very much, Simonetta. I have tons of questions, but I will begin with two.
Okay.
Technical one on what you just said, and then one, a more personal one.
Okay.
Now, the technical one is that you were talking about the numbers of satellites that they're registered, and it struck me that Russia has more satellites registered than the US. I cannot imagine the US having less satellites than Russia in the space. So I would like to know how is that, how do you explain that, what is going on? And then the second is actually on yourself. You mentioned you are the only director, in fact, at UN in Vienna and the first at UNOSA. So you have been there for 2.5 years. And what is the difference, the added value that you think you bring to your job as a woman leader, as a woman director? And we can go from there.
Okay, so the first question, indeed, the United States in the last year didn't register so much. So that's also one of the things I have to deal with this week. But that's normal. It depends on the internal procedures. But indeed, yes, if you consider that the Russians, that figure is also considering the Soviet Union at the beginning, they did launch more satellites. And as I said, they are registering all the satellites that they launch in every field. We are not questioning about the scope of the satellite. We just register. This is the convention. We follow the convention. By the way, this is something that we discharge. This is a responsibility directly of the SG. So we discharge this responsibility from him. But okay, yes, this is the picture of the current situation. Being female in a leadership position, I have to say that what I'm bringing at the Office for Outer Space Affairs is my technical background, is my network of all the main space agencies, a lot of experts. We have been, in a way, growing together. I met most of the head of space agencies here and there when I was at the beginning of my career. So in a way, they are friends of mine because they did their career in their country, mostly men, but that's the point. That's life, I would say. But I have a very good relationship with a lot of space agencies, a lot of head of space agencies, with a lot of experts, a lot of research labs at top level. And so this is something that I'm bringing, my personal network, which is professional but personal, to the UN. Then I have to say that the UN, I have a very good team, very motivated, very, very professional. And with this additional knowledge that I'm bringing, the team is reinforcing itself. So we are really able to do far more than what the office was able to do before, but just because it's a very good combination of skills, of gender, of geographical distribution. So we have a very good team. Being female, what I can tell you is that I can cope with very high stress. Frankly, I don't know what stress means. In the sense that I feel always in a situation in which I can handle. I don't know how to better explain. This was not the case at the beginning of my career. It happened at a certain point in time. And this is because when you master the topic, you don't have to feel uncomfortable. You don't need to feel uncomfortable. Clearly, sometimes there are difficult situations that you have to handle, and so more and more political in my case now. And so I'm learning a lot because as I said, my background is technical. I'm an astrophysicist by education. I've been always dealing with huge international programs, the International Space Station, the solar system exploration, big scientific programs in the field of space science. So it's sometimes at the beginning some political problems I had to study. I worked a lot in improving my knowledge in terms of geopolitics in other topics which were not exactly in my educational background. But I have to say that it seems that I'm succeeding quite well, because I've been defined recently astrodiplomat, which in a way means that I'm coping. I'm putting together the two sides. Becoming a diplomat together with a strong technical background. What I have to say is that I've been working always, as I said, in developing huge international programs like the International Space Station, or when you need to send astronauts in orbit on the space station, and you have Japanese, Europeans, Americans, Russians, and sometimes also other nationalities. So you put everyone together, Canadians, you put everyone together, and you have to manage your astronaut on board, but in a group of people different from culture. They have different cultures, different approaches, different way of doing, but it works quite well. It's just a question of knowing your counterpart and being able always to find a win-win situation, which is something that I have to say I do quite well. Thinking about the others.
I can do the following one.
I was going to say, jump in. Go ahead.
All right. Well, the next two questions then.
Okay.
You spoke quite eloquently about your advantages. What about the disadvantages of being a woman on the job?
And can I ask a follow-up to that?
Yeah.
I think knowing Federica, know what we're thinking too. You've talked about bringing in your networks and building cooperation. Do you find the old boys network there from the start of your career and now? And how is that an advantage or a disadvantage?
Let me try to answer mixing up the two questions and the answer. Yes, I had in the past, mainly at the beginning of my career, some events or episodes or whatever, which were clearly of discriminatory nature. And yes, at the beginning, also when I was at the Italian Space Agency, and I was joining scientific or whatever meetings, usually I was the only one, and then 25 men. And at the beginning, they were always looking at me, young and woman, so what she's doing here, right? And then at that stage, I had this approach. I was listening. During the first meeting, I was listening all the time. Then the second meeting, I was listening all the time, not showing up at all. And then I was looking at them and trying to understand each of them and the body language of what they were saying and where they wanted to land and so on. And then starting from the third meeting onwards, I was going straight and saying, no, in my opinion, it's not like that. It's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And they were looking at me saying, I mean, what's going on? And so I've been, let's say, creating also this, position in the system. I remember when I was in Russia for the first time, in Star City, and they were a little bit surprised that I was leading the delegation. So I had to follow certain procedures in order to be accepted, including drinking vodka. But I have to tell you that I developed a wonderful relationship with the Russians there at the Star City, and in general with the Russian Space Agency and all the experts there. And I remember once, and I was in Japan, and then my protocol office told me, okay, when you go there, I mean, you're a woman, okay, so please, if you get any gift from them, don't open it. Put it in your bag and bring it at home. And then, okay, fine. I said, I brought my gift, which was, by the way, a book, images from a satellite of the European Space Agency. So I gave this book. It was the head of the Japanese Space Agency. I gave him this book. It was wrapped, and he gave me the gift. It was wrapped. So I put the gift in my bag. And then he started to open his gifts. And then I said, okay. Now, just to say that I was informed that their culture was, okay, they're not opening any gift, so be patient, not do anything. And he was instructed that we, instead in Europe, are used to open the gifts. So just to tell you that you need to learn how your counterpart is behaving, and then in this way, you have to, you can really develop a very good relationship, which at the very end was the same approach I was having when I was very young in this big room of old men, very experienced. They were looking at me like, Now, I have to tell you, getting older, this is not happening so much. Sometimes you have more political problems than problems related to the gender. Even if there is always something happening, but my approach is never give up. I don't care. It's more their problem than mine.
Do you consider yourself a role model with your staff or with other women, and do you have an obligation?
I have to tell you, the first time that someone told me that I was a role model, I started to do like that. I said, oh, there is something wrong. Are you sure that I'm a role model? Yes, I feel now that, yes, I'm a role model. So it's a duty that I have, in a way, to help others. And that's also the reason why I created Women in Aerospace Europe. And considering that just in few years we became more than 600 members just in Europe, also with members from other countries outside Europe, I feel that there was the need for that. And also the requests that we are getting from the youngest are quite interesting. They asking us to provide them with some, training on how to go through an interview for a certain position, or how to do properly in public speaking, which is interesting because these are the two main requests that we get. But the main part, and I go back to your original question of the club of boys, I realized later in my career that networking is really important. And it's true that women network a little bit less, or at least this was the case a bit ago. But Women in Aerospace, for example, is a very good platform, like all the other networking platforms, because you can put senior and junior together. And so the junior, they can get a lot of help from us. I mean, when I did my career, no one was helping me. I mean, I was just doing everything by myself. But you know, if you have someone who can tell you, okay, better that you do this or better that you do that, first this and first that, okay, it can be helpful. And then it can also be helpful because you see, I mean, if you are a young woman, you see that there are a certain number of senior women who made it. And so, yes, at the end, I'm a role model.
I have one question last from me is, you talked about space in the SDGs, and you gave a couple of examples looking around the resilience or the disaster relief, and I think the girls in STEM. What are some of how hopeful are you that space will help us get to the SDGs? And I'll be controversial in a way that we did not get to the MDGs.
Yeah, I have to say that this is quite an interesting question. I was talking to the World Bank last week, and we debated about the fact that yes, it's broad enough that yes, it's difficult that you fulfill all of them, because 17, like eradicating poverty in 15 years, yes, probably is a little bit too ambitious. But there are others in which we can do a lot. And for sure, I didn't show it because it was, I wanted to keep it short. But what we are doing right now is to map all our activities vis-a-vis the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And for example, we can be very helpful when we talk about climate, or where we talk about water and food security, global health, partnership. It's what we do by definition. Education, girl equality, equality and gender balance. So there are topics in which we can really use space as a tool for that. We are at the beginning. As I said, I'm mapping all the activities we are currently performing. But I would like even to do better, and I would like to create some initiatives and projects which are able to match better the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. So this is one of the things I'm going to do in June 2018 at the global conference Unispace Plus 50.
Fantastic.
And you talked about networking, and what about sponsors and mentors? What is your experience? Do you have women sponsors and mentors, men sponsors and mentors, nothing at all?
No, I had a lot of friends helping me here and there. I never had a mentor, and I never had a huge sponsor, but I had a lot of strong friends. So in my case, was more a collective, action, sometimes helping me strongly, but not just one mentor or one, someone to follow. No.
Yeah. And what advice did you? We have some young women here, some other more. So what would your advice? What would it be your advice to them?
I can only advise on the basis of my experience, which means that I always worked hard, and I'm even working harder now, under the assumption that if you are leading a group, you have to work more than them. I believe that commitment is another key word. Passion. I was talking to Gwen before this event, and I was saying that I was looking for a job allowing me to do two main things. One is to keep my passion alive, and the second something that would help me to continuously learn. So something that I wanted to do was not to lay down and whatever, but really learning. And what I'm doing right now, what I was doing in my past 30 years of my career is exactly this. Learning every day, studying, meeting people. And then another important element is that you have to balance your professional and your personal life, but the balance is really what you believe is your balance. There is nothing in this field that someone can teach you on. I mean, I sometimes see young women in my team being struggled because someone told them that they have to spend more time at home, that they are not good mothers because of whatever reason. I frankly believe that's not the case. I have a wonderful son, 25 years old, is great, and we have a wonderful relationship. And frankly, I believe that also in that case, I'm a role model. He is convinced that there is no discrimination between men and women. Good for him. And and sometimes it also feels that is the other way around because, you know, being man and white, sometimes he feels discriminated. No, joking. But the point is that yes, what you need to do is to be yourself, do what you like. Don't listen to others telling you, okay, you are a woman, you cannot do that. It's not true. You can do what you like. It's just a question of working hard, being committed, and maintaining your passion all your life. And flexibility. Flexibility is absolutely key. Every time, because this is linked, flexibility is linked to innovation. And you are not able to innovate even yourself if you're not flexible enough. And this is clearly, sometimes that is not so clear very often, but flexibility is important. And you have always to look at the positive side of any negative situation. That's the way in which I sometimes, because, you know, it can happen that you have very bad moments. It happened to me too, at a certain point in time. I managed to find a lot of additional friends, and I managed to understand how to deal with very difficult political situations. So,
Wow. Pollyanna approach.
I like it. There's, yeah, look at the sun's always shining, right? I think we have time for just a couple of questions. This has been incredibly engaging, and I think we have a lot, but I don't know if we have a microphone that's probably sitting up here on the front panel, but I see we have a young woman back there, I believe. And we'll probably take a couple of questions at the same time, just to keep it moving. And then I do realize it's about 5:30, so I don't want it to be too long. Yes, and can you start by identifying who you are and where you come from, so to speak?
Absolutely. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Yetunde Olumide. I'm the budget director at the Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority.
Oh,
I'm
wow.
happy to be here with you all.
Fantastic.
I had kind of two questions. The first is, how did you become interested in astrophysics? And the next is, I have a husband, 2 boys, and a 7-year-old daughter. And I can't get my 7-year-old daughter away from what they call them, Miley Cyrus and all those Disney Channel and things. I'm trying to make sure, you know, I steer her in the right direction. How did you become so energetic about this and obviously so passionate about it?
okay, so the first question is, I was a kid, was 10 years old when the first man landed on the moon, and I don't know if this had an influence or not. But for sure, what I was really, really, you know, when you look at something and you feel that there's something that you want to be part of that. I mean, you want to be part of exploring, of looking at the future, innovate, and so on. So I always had the passion for science. And at the very end, after my high school, the equivalent of high school in Italy, I decided for physics, and then I moved to astrophysics and space science. And at that time, I mean, it was a long time ago, let's say more than 30 years ago, it was, I mean, we were more or less the same number of freshmen at the beginning. And when I got my the equivalent of a master's degree, because at that time was completely different. So let's say the equivalent of a master's degree, I was 1 out of 10 because during, year by year, okay, women were getting married or their parents were telling her, given her, why you are doing that. Then you will get married, you will have kids, you cannot manage this kind of career with your family. No, it's just a question of being organized and looking at what you want to do, and frankly, when I think about myself being at home and not able to do what my brain wants me to do, I would have been destroyed. So that's what happened. And frankly, as I said, I wanted something that was helping me to learn every day, and this is exactly the field. And then, when you study planets in you start realizing how far they are one from the other, and how big is the solar system, and how big is our galaxy, and how many galaxies you have in our universe, assuming that we have just one universe. Well, a lot of things in your day-by-day life, which usually are considered, big problems, okay, you look at them with a different perspective. On the second question, I always left my son alone. Alone in the sense that I didn't want to impose him anything. I was just telling him one single thing every day, more or less. You have a good brain. You have your abilities there. Don't lose them. Keep going, because that's what you have. And there is only something, the one thing that in your life no one can keep out of you, which is your knowledge and your abilities and your capacity also, in a way. So, frankly, I believe that your young daughter will find her way, and you are a role model for her too, I'm sure. So she will get it, I'm sure.
Can I say something on this? Maybe because I come from a different background, I'm European, but if I look around statistically, I have a young son, I guess, believe the same age of your daughter, and I think the thing that works best is example. For instance, he wasn't particularly sportive. I started to train consistently until he started to want to come with me, all right? But if I look around, everybody think that their son or daughter will become a #1 ballerina, a genius. Statistically, it's not possible. And I think people are much too stressed in this country. Relax. We all, there is serious, whatever it's called. We all had in our youth things that our parents thought that were wrong for us. We all survived. I remember fighting with my parents about Japanese cartoons. So, as long as she has example, as long as they know that the talents they have mean nothing if they don't work hard, the rest will come. They might not be Einstein, but might not end up in Harvard. Who cares? As long as they're good kids and good adults.
They might end up in outer space. But that seems like a good way to end this, though, because I think one of the things that was a theme throughout your PowerPoint, and definitely is closing on this, Simonetta, is to work hard, to always learn, to engage. And I really liked the piece about sort of passion and flexibility at the same time. You have to be passionate, and I think people are nodding around the room. But life will teach you as you grow that you also have to be a bit flexible with that passion. Some of this is timing. Some of it is the ability to embrace the change. But it's really nice to have this here in Washington and hear about something quite different than we're getting in the media. So I'm very excited, and welcome to the Wilson Center. We hope to have you back. Thank you very much.
Thank you
and
very
Federica,
much.
thank you.
Thank you.